Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to take you through a Game Week 4 Wildcard draft and a Game Week 4 Free Hit draft and discuss some of the key players that we should be looking out for. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, it feels good to be back. The international breaks, especially at the start of the season, can feel pretty long and pretty boring. Let me know if you got up to anything interesting over the international break. If you spoke to friends, spoke to family, maybe even touched grass, or if you just carried on thinking about FPL. I myself was focusing on my PhD, so I didn't have much of a break. It was just a very different thing to think about. But you're not here to hear about my international break and my PhD. You're here to hear about a wildcard and a free hit. That was a lot of words for the start. What I'm going to do today is focus on the wildcard in a little bit more detail, simply because as much as there is a lot to talk about with a free hit, it's 1 week. So you just target the good fixtures and pick the players you think will do the points for that specific week. And you can trust your gut feeling a lot in that case. But with a wildcard, because this is your only wildcard you're getting for the first half of the season, and you're trying to project what will happen over a sort of 5 to 6 game weeks, I think there's a little bit more thought goes into it, probably. But again, if you're on your free hit, definitely think about it in a lot of detail. Once I've gone through the wildcard team, I'll then go through some of the key talking points and some of the other players and teams that you might want to consider that I've probably not managed to squeeze into this wildcard team. So, when I was thinking about a Game Week 4 wildcard, I tried to give this a lot of thought. There were kind of 2 directions I went down. The first direction I went down was I tried building a Salah and Haaland draft, because Salah's got Burnley and Everton and across the next 2, and he is the greatest FPL asset of all time. We know what he can do on his day. Liverpool have looked pretty good over the opening 3 game weeks, and having their penalty take with the best projected fixtures, with Isak joining, you would imagine that they will score even more goals. It just feels right having Salah in there. But I can't ignore what I've seen from Erling Haaland over the first 3 weeks, given he's accumulated already almost 4 XG. The player closest to Haaland's 3.88 XG that he's managed so far this season is Ismail Assar with 2. So Haaland has been in a league of his own over the opening 3, and I kind of would want a Haaland. So then I just said, well, then you just have to fit both of them in. But then when I built a wildcard draft with Salah and with Haaland, I just didn't like it. So what I'm going to present to you today, and I won't spoil it yet, you might want to skip ahead, feel free to do so. What I'm going to show you today is actually a wildcard draft with only one of them. I won't tell you which one yet, but I've only got one of them in, because I just think you can build such a better squad if you only choose to go with one. And it is a hard decision as to which one you go with. It might be dictated by a chip strategy, but I think that just allows for a much better 15. And when we actually look at the goalkeepers and the defence, you can already see a little bit of what you can achieve if you just make the difficult decision of only going with one of them. So as of right now, the starting goalkeeper and 3 defenders is David Raya, Pedro Porro, Daniel Munoz, and Cucurella. So why have I gone for this combination? I will just note, you can make this a lot cheaper. So rather than Raya and Cucurella, immediately a way to make this cheaper is to go for Sanchez and Gabriel. You're saving 0.5 million, I think, ish there by going for Sanchez and Gabriel. I just think that combination's better. Munoz, I think, is brilliant, but you could go for Lacroix. You could go for Richards. Lacroix is a baseline bonus monster, a DEFCON monster. He is also pretty decent in the air, as we've seen already this season. Lacroix is brilliant, and Richards in Game Week 3 shows that he will pick up defensive contributions. Pedro Porro has been really good, but with Xavi Simons signing, he'll be on less set pieces, potentially none at all. And again, Van de Ven and Romero have shown that they can offer quite a lot for their price points. So if you decided, actually, I want to squeeze both Salah and Haaland in, or I want to put a bit more money in the attack, if you went for Sanchez, Gabriel, Lacroix, and Van de Ven, you'd have a similar-ish sort of defence. I think it would be quite a bit weaker, but similar-ish, cover the same sort of teams, but you'd save yourself a lot of money. But yeah, I do think you want an Arsenal defender if you're wildcarding now, because from Game Week 7 onwards, I can almost guarantee that you would want to have at least one Arsenal defender. Do I think for Manchester City and Newcastle in Game Weeks 5 and 6, you'd love an Arsenal defender? Maybe not, but also we've seen from Arsenal, even in the Liverpool game, they can defend incredibly well. And I actually think the Forest at home game this week, as you'll see when you look at my free hit draft, it's also a targetable fixture because Forest have never been a fantastic attack. So yeah, I just think you're getting ahead of the curve. You're making sure that you're not booking in future transfers. So having Raya is great. Would I like to have someone like a Yuri and Timber instead? Absolutely. I just don't fully trust his minutes. And with Gabriel, I don't think that Gabriel is as good of an option as a Cucurella. And again, as much as the Sanchez and Gabriel option would be cheaper, I really wanted to put Cucurella in here as my sort of Chelsea defensive cover, my Chelsea defender of choice. So yeah, that's why I've gone for Raya. And on Cucurella, I think probably the most impressive defender so far in FPL this season. Continues to be completely, I don't know about underrated, but overlooked simply because you can get Sanchez for $1 million cheaper. And that in and of itself is a good reason to maybe look elsewhere. But in his own right, Cucurella is just brilliant. I'm looking at my own team right now. I have the money this week to go out and get Munoz. And I love Munoz. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know he's one of my favourite defenders. But I also have the money to go and get Cucurella. And part of me is just wondering, everyone will pile in on Munoz, and Cucurella will continue to be overlooked, and he's been so incredibly good. So yeah, I really like the idea of getting him. So Cucurella in there with Raya. Munoz feels like a straightforward one, or at least one Palace defender. Sunderland and West Ham in the next two. If you are potentially looking to free hit in Game Week 6, which is an option, this draft has not been built with free hit 6 in mind, which I'll discuss a bit later. But if you are, you can obviously get rid of them for that week, or you can just bench them against Liverpool. And then it's Everton and Bournemouth. I think overall, Palace are a fantastic defence. They've managed to keep Mark Gay, by the way, which is a massive, massive boost for them. It's almost like a signing in the transfer window, managing to hold on to him until at least January. Obviously, Liverpool might come back in for him, but that's a massive boost. So yeah, I think Munoz not only carries attacking threat, not only is great for DEFCON, not only plays for a very decent defence in Palace, but also we have the good fixtures coming up as well. So I think Munoz would be non-negotiable. That being said, Lacroix and Richards do offer good value if you want to go there instead. Pedro Porro would be the one defender. If you said, I need to free up some funds here, I can't have this exact defence, who would be the one that would drop out? Is Pedro Porro. I've basically put Pedro Porro in because at the time of me making this draft, I can just about afford to squeeze him in. But yeah, if you wanted to go for a Van de Ven instead to save like $1 million or so, that's absolutely fine. If you wanted to go for Lacroix and Munoz, maybe a double up on the Palace defence, that works. You can see at the moment, I've got Senesi on the bench against Brighton. You could arguably even start him this week. And for most of the future fixtures, you can start Senesi. I mean, Senesi has been unbelievable so far this season. DEFCON monster. But I think Bournemouth so far have probably looked better defensively than a lot of people expected them to. I just think Iraola is a brilliant manager. And yeah, again, the fixtures are now starting to turn for the better for Bournemouth. So Senesi, I don't know that he is absolutely 100% the standout sort of cheap 4.5-ish million defender, but he's certainly my favourite. I also do still really like Anderson of Fulham as well. I think if you're looking for two 4.5s, I've not really looked into the rotation too much, but those would probably be the two that stand out for me. I've then gone for Rodon as my 4 million defender. The reason for that is Leeds have just looked a little bit better than Burnley for me. You could go for Goodmanson as well if you wanted to. I'm still really surprised that Biol isn't starting for Leeds, but clearly it's kind of working for them in terms of the team that they're going with right now. So yeah, it doesn't matter which 4 million defender you go for. Hopefully you're not planning on playing them too often. Although, again, if you want to plan the bench boost in a little bit more detail, you might want to work out which week you want to play the bench boost, and that might help you to decide which one you go for. So you won't be able to get this defence in a wildcard team if you go with both Salah and Haaland. I can guarantee you that. So that is one of the major benefits of choosing one of them. Let me know what you think of the defence. Let's now take a look at the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, and it does look a little bit weak. And I say a little bit weak. In terms of price points and the money spent, it is extremely weak. And the main reason for that is there is no Mohamed Salah in this draft. And this isn't to be different. This isn't just for content's sake. I will explain why when we look at the entire squad and when we talk about a potential chip strategy. But as of right now, yeah, there's no Salah, but there's also obviously no Palmer, with the fact we don't know that he's definitely 100% fit for Game Week 4. And also, he's not been performing at a particularly high level. Bukayo Saka is probably going to be out for Game Week 4, but I've not yet seen an update on that. So yeah, when you go without Salah, you probably are going to go without Palmer and Saka as well. I don't think I would have Bruno Fernandes on a wildcard. So what we're looking at is my most expensive midfielder is Cody Gakpo. So the midfield five, as things stand, is Kudus, Semenyo, Gakpo, Grealish, and then Anderson at the moment on the bench for his tricky fixture this week. So let's talk through each of these players. I'll start with Kudus. Would I like to put Xavi Simons in there? Yes. And obviously you could just free up some funds by, like I say, downgrading Pedro Porro to make that switch. Do I think Xavi Simons will be unbelievably good in the Premier League? I've got very high hopes for him. His set-piece delivery, by the way, is sensational. So I think with Kudus, he'll share set pieces. He'll probably take the in-swingers with his right foot. Kudus will take the in-swingers with his left foot. It could even be that Xavi Simons takes all of them. But we just know that, and credit by the way, to Above Average and Adam and Baker for sort of pointing this out, But Xavi Simons just operates in the centre of the pitch. We know that he can play on the left and he can play on the right, but even when he plays in those positions, he's a very central player. So I expect Kudus to be very, very wide still, being very creative and probably having lower goal threat. And I expect Xavi Simons to be in the right positions at the right time. So I think eventually, absolutely, Xavi Simons might be the one to go for. But there's a lot of hypothesizing going on yet. Here, we've not seen him in the Premier League. We don't know that he will go straight into the 11, although you probably would imagine that he will. And I just think that Kudus has looked really decent over the first three. And the one thing about Kudus is that his minutes feel super secure right now. Because you could say, I'll go for Johnson, I'll go for Xavi Simons, I'll maybe go for neither and I'll go for Richarlison in the attack. But none of that fills me with that much confidence right now in terms of projected minutes. So the thing that I love about Kudus, yes, he's got particularly low goal threat over the opening three. He's looked more creative and really we do want the goals. But his minutes have looked good. I think his overall performances have been solid and his place looks pretty secure. And when we look at the fixtures for Spurs, West Ham, Brighton, Wolves, Leeds, Villa, you can basically, up until about game week 9, play your Spurs player every single week. So that's why I like Kudus. He's at a good price point. Minutes feel decent. I'm impressed by what I've seen from Thomas Frank's Spurs team, as we expected would be the case. He just feels like a really nice, solid pick. But yeah, keep an eye on Xavi Simons, of course. And if you want to take the punt based on what we hear in the press conferences and what we see from training photos and stuff like that, then feel free to do so. I've got Semenyo in. I don't think many people would argue with the Semenyo pick. I think he's risen in price more than any other player so far this season. He's up to 7.4 million. Really good fixtures overall. Brighton, Newcastle, Leeds, Fulham, Crystal Palace. Again, you can play Semenyo across the next 5 weeks and you wouldn't in any of those weeks think, oh, I'd rather not have Semenyo this week. It does look like there are just certain seasons when a player just makes that step up. You know, they just have that season where it's like something feels a bit different. It looks a bit different. I'm not even talking about the data here. It's just a feeling you get around a player. And it does feel like this season, Semenyo might have taken that step forward. If he just improves his finishing marginally based on what we saw last season, he had the 3rd or 4th most shots in the Premier League last season. So he could be in for a, 15 to 20 goal season, add a few assists in there as well. I can understand why a lot of people are looking to bring him in. I would definitely have him on a wildcard. It feels a fairly secure pick there. I'll then jump to, let's do Gakpo next. It might be weird for you to see Gakpo in here because I said at the start of the season I was slightly worried about Gakpo's minutes. That obviously proved to not be the case because they didn't go out and pick a direct left winger. Isak didn't join at the start of the window. So thus far, Gakpo's minutes have been extremely secure and his performances have been very good. But I've been saying across the last couple of weeks, as soon as Isak signs, Gakpo's a bit of a no-go for me because Isak can play as the 9, they can chuck Ekitike on the left, and Gakpo's minutes might be reduced. So why is Gakpo in here? I would find it very difficult to go without any Liverpool players at all, especially given it's Burnley and Everton across the next 2. Especially that Burnley game. It would feel terrible to wildcard in a week where Liverpool have Burnley and to choose 0 attackers or just 0 Liverpool in general. So that is a bit of the reason is it's the fixtures. But Isak hasn't had a pre-season. He's played absolutely no minutes. He's not been taking part in sort of full team training. So his match fitness will be relatively low, even if he has the ability to go and play 60 minutes, which I don't know that Arne Slot will believe he does right now. But let's say he has the ability. Why would he just chuck Isak straight in when Ekitike, Gakpo, Wirtz and Salah, that front 4, has been working really effectively for them? I feel like, and I don't know Arne Slot personally, but I feel like he's a very merit-based manager and they deserve to continue getting the minutes. So do I expect Isak to at least come off the bench in Game Week 4? Probably, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a start for Isak until Game Week 6, maybe Game Week 5. But who's to say that it will be Gakpo rather than Ekitike that misses out? Because as much as Ekitike can play off the left, Gakpo is definitely the more naturally sort of left-sided player. If you're going to play one of them in that position, Gakpo feels a little bit more secure. So I think Gakpo starts Burnley and Everton. From game week sort of 6/7 onwards, he becomes an issue. So if you don't want to book transfers in, if you want to have a Liverpool player that you know will continue to start, go for a Salah or arguably even go for a Florian Wirtz. But I think Gakpo starts the next 2 and then you can decide after that in a couple of weeks who's the player that you want to move to next. Or let's say Gakpo just smashes it the next 2 and one of Ekitike or Isak pick up a little knock, which could happen with Isak given he's not had much sort of many pre-season minutes, then you might end up just keeping Gakpo indefinitely. So I don't love it as a transfer in. Like if you're using a transfer to go and get Gakpo this week, I'm a little bit unsure. But on a wildcard, I don't mind the inclusion there. I've also gone and put Jack Grealish in here. This is very knee-jerky, and it's also not a very me pick, because alongside sort of Kudus, Grealish hasn't shown much goal threat. And listen, you can see from the 2 games that he's played, assists are absolutely enough to go out there and get you double-digit hauls, but you need multiple assists, again, as we've seen. And do I expect him to keep up a rate of 2 assists per game? No. Has his assist threat been really good? Yes. And at least 2 of the assists have been brilliant from him. And he looks like he's got his spark back. Everton are actually attacking fairly well. There is a lot to like about going and putting Jack Grealish in. But at the same time, I do think temper your expectations slightly. Because again, unless he keeps up a crazy rate of 2 assists per game or adds more goal threat to his game, we might start to see the returns tailor off a little bit. But I like it. It's a bit of fun. You're playing on the sort of form factor, which maybe content creators, myself included, don't play on enough, right? We're always focused on fixtures and data. Grealish is just looking really good at the moment. That might be enough. I also like when players have something to play for or a reason to play well. He's going to play against Aston Villa in Game Week 4. We know his old team. And then it's the Merseyside derby. Then it's West Ham at home. And then it's Crystal Palace at home. So 3 home games in the next 4. The next 2 have both got reasons that you can imagine that he would want to perform especially well in them. So yeah, I could see Grealish being a great pick. I then look at it though, and for 0.2 million less, I believe it is, you can actually have Iliman NDI. I always call him something different. NDI. He's on penalties, we think. His minutes will be very, very good. He's got more goal threat than Jack Grealish as well. Is he a better FPL pick? Arguably. I'd love to know what you think of this down below, because, yeah, based on what we've seen so far from Grealish, he's been brilliant. But I do feel like Iliman NDI is slightly more of a me FPL pick. And again, if you were to probably look at some sort of algorithm or model, they would probably have NDI quite a bit higher, I would imagine, than Jack Grealish, and for decent reason, potentially. But in the spirit of fun and sort of picking players that just because you like them and they're playing well, I put Jack Grealish in this one. And then I've got Elliot Anderson on the bench. The reason for Anderson being on the bench here is, again, this draft has not been built with free hit 6 in mind. So to have him coming in Game Week 6, when you've got a couple of your Palace players playing against Liverpool and maybe some other players that have perfect fixtures, having Anderson to come in there is really nice. He also plays against, obviously, Burnley next week. And this week, the other 7 attackers have good fixtures, so you can just put him on the bench. Over the opening 3 weeks, he's achieved 11 defensive contributions in every single game. If he'd have just got 1 more tackle in each game, we'd be looking at extra 6 points for Anderson, at which point he probably would have risen in price. We'd be looking at him very differently. And I know ifs, buts, and maybes, but that is very marginal stuff there. In a game where he's made 11 defensive contributions, 1 more isn't a massive amount. And I've been really impressed by his overall performances as well. So that's the midfield 5. In terms of what is missing, Mohamed Salah is missing. Do I want to have Mohamed Salah in this wildcard draft? Absolutely yes. Like, Salah is still, absolutely for me, the best Liverpool asset to own, but he's also significantly more expensive than the rest of them. And as I said, Erling Haaland has been, for me, from an FPL perspective, exactly what you want from a premium. He's getting so many big chances and accumulating so much XG and having so many shots in the box. I find it difficult to sit here, based on my decision-making framework and the way that I make decisions, to sit here and justify picking Salah over Haaland. I don't know that I can do it. Other than just 1 fixture against Burnley now, but remember, Haaland has Burnley in 6. There aren't any other reasons that I would say that I think Salah is a better pick than Haaland now. So I just went for the brave, and again, I'm not wildcarding, so I say the brave call, but I went for the brave call of taking Salah out of this and putting Haaland in instead. Salah just hasn't impressed me. And I saw someone say, oh yeah, but he's got 5-8 in the first 2. Yes, he's blanked in quite a tricky fixture in 3. That's a pretty decent start. I'm not talking about his returns and his FPL points. His overall performances and the amount of chances, big chances that he's getting, and even to some extent creating, because he's been so much more creative in recent years, I've just not been impressed by Mohamed Salah at all, at any point across the opening 3. And yes, the fixtures have been a little bit more difficult, and Burnley and Everton are great, and Salah could just flip a switch at any time and turn it on. I'd need to see a whole lot more for the price that he's at right now. And I don't mind the slightly differential play, I say slightly, quite a differential play, of dropping a Salah, having an incredibly strong team, and choosing Erling Haaland instead. I'd love to know what you think of that. I know a lot of people are either very heavy on the Salah in versus Salah out. I think it could go either way, but there is nothing for me to sit here and say that Salah is a much better option than Haaland. So why not show you a Haaland draft? So guys, based on the pretty cheap midfield, you could have envisioned that the front 3 is expensive, but also looking very strong as well. We have Gyökeres against Forest at home, Haaland, who would have the armband with this team, and also Jean-Philippe Mateta. So to read out that team, it's Raya in goal, Porro, Munoz, Cucurella, an extremely solid back line. You've got Kudus, Semenyo, Gakpo, and Grealish. 4 midfielders are all around that sort of same price for about 6.5 to 7.5 million. And then you've got Gyökeres, Haaland, and Mateta. Extremely well balanced, other than, of course, missing a premium midfielder. I just spoke about Haaland, and I want to re-emphasize, I don't think Haaland is a supremely better option than Mohamed Salah, but from what I've seen over the opening three, I do think he has been a better FPL asset, and moving forward, I could continue to see him do really well. One of the main reasons that people are going without Erling Haaland is they are citing that really the one fixture that you desperately want to own him for is Burnley at home in Game Week 6. I've been saying that in my own team, so what is the easy thing to do there? Just free hit in Game Week 6. And I've seen a lot of people build a Game Week 4 wildcard team without Haaland and say the same thing. And in all honesty, I kind of get it for the same reason. Why do you need Haaland? If the one fixture you really want him for is 6 against Burnley at home, just pick a wildcard team in Game Week 4 that is triple Palace, who have Liverpool at home that week. Go without Haaland, go without any City. You can obviously free hit 3 of them in for Game Week 6 against Burnley. It does make a lot of sense. But you will not win FPL and you will not do really well just following the same strategy as everyone else. So an alternative strategy is actually to say, well, I'm going to have Haaland now. I think Haaland is a perfectly viable captain, by the way, against Manchester United at home in Game Week 4. Or you could even go and captain Cody Gakpo instead, who has looked very good himself. And then you get to save your free hit in Game Week 6, the week where everyone else is free hitting to basically get Erling Haaland, because you can build a team, right? This team in Game Week 6 looks absolutely fantastic. Grealish has West Ham at home. Semenyo's got Leeds. Kudus and Pedro Porro have Wolves. This team looks really good in Game Week 6. So you save your free hit in 6. You're going slightly differential in the way you structure your team in Game Week 4, but you're not doing it just for the sake of it. I would never advise being different just for the sake of being different. You're also building an incredibly strong team. So I quite like the idea of going with Haaland, having a little bit of a different approach and structure, and also saving your free hit in 6. Now, where do you use the free hit if not in 6? Just keep it and wait for a week where it feels good. You don't need to have a plan for it. And there is always a chance, by the way, that a random blank and double happens in the first half of the season if there's a postponement for whatever reason. And if there's not, just play it in any old week. Again, offsetting your strategy and making it slightly different to those around you is never a terrible thing to do. So, yeah, that's why I've got Haaland in here. Perfectly viable captain this week, have him ahead of Game Week 6. And even after that, he's got Brentford and Everton as well. The fixtures continue to look really decent for Manchester City. On Gyökeres, I don't love the next 3-4, the sort of Arsenal attackers, right? Forest, for everything we say about them, they're not a bad defence. I know they've just conceded 3 to West Ham, but all 3 came at the end of the game. Outside of that, before that, it looked like another clean sheet for Nottingham Forest, or at least their first of the season. But in general, it looked like what we'd seen from Forest in the past. I don't think they'll be as solid defensively this season, but I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't expect tons of goals for Arsenal in that game. Then they face Man City and Newcastle. Newcastle in particular have looked very, very strong over the opening 3. City's a bit hit and miss. Like that game could be 4-4, that game could be 0-0. I guess I'm just saying that over the next 3, that's not really why or when you would want to own Gyökeres desperately. But after that, you absolutely want to have him in your team. He's the penalty taker for Arsenal. He's the number 9. As much as I've criticised some certain aspects of his performances so far, there's also a lot to like, and the fixtures just turn for the better so much from Game Week 7 onwards. West Ham and Fulham to start. It's a really nice run for Arsenal. So I almost feel like with Raya and Gyökeres, you're putting them in because you're playing a slightly early wildcard and you don't want to book in loads of transfers. You've already got a Gakpo potential issue in this team that you'd need to sort. You don't also then want to go in without any Arsenal, have to make a couple of transfers to bring them in. You get the picture. It's basically like future proofing and planning ahead a little bit. So that's why he's in there. But being a penalty taker and being the number 9 for, I would say, top 2 teams in the league at the moment, probably along with Liverpool, it's also not a bad pick. You could, and I know this is crazy, you could go with Ollie Watkins for the next 3 and then look to make that move after. I'm just not sure I'm a huge fan of Ollie Watkins and Aston Villa at the moment. It's very difficult, again, to sit here and try and justify why I'd pick them. It's the fixtures and it's historical performances. But the opening 3 game weeks for Villa have been so bad. The other thing you could do is take a punt on Alexander Isak in that position, right? You could try and free up 1.5 million. It's not easy to do 1.5 million, but it's possible. And then go for him in that position. I just, again, don't know that he starts Game Week 4. And I think at least with Gyökeres, if Isak starts Game Week 5 or 4 and just looks unreal, you've at least got a position in your team that's relatively straightforward to move to him if you need to. So yeah, I've got him in for that reason. And then the third and final forward is Jean-Philippe Mateta. understandably, a lot of people are a little bit worried about Mateta as a pick, given that obviously Eberechi Eze has gone, and also Ismail Assar looks like he'll be out for at least Game Week 4, maybe Game Week 5, which are the two good fixtures. All I will say is obviously Eze was not there for the 3-0 win against Villa, right? So that was a game already that has shown that they can do well without him in the team. And Ismail Assar is brilliant. I think he's incredibly underrated in the Premier League and in FPL. I think he's a fantastic attacker, but he isn't known for his creativity. And I know there is much more that it's not just, does Sarr assist Mateta? If he doesn't, therefore, it doesn't affect Mateta. Obviously, it affects how well functioning their attack is. It affects sort of the link up with Munoz, which might then in turn affect Mateta. So it's not as simplified as that. But also, I don't feel like Sarr is their creative force, and that without him, Mateta will have absolutely no chances. So will it make their team weaker, losing their left-sided attacker and their right-sided attacker? Yes, absolutely. But I still think Crystal Palace can score goals against Sunderland and West Ham. Maybe slightly fewer, but Mateta being on pens, being the number 9, if they are going to score goals, let's say they score 3 goals over the next 2 games and they don't score too many, you'd still expect Mateta to be involved in 1 or 2 of them. So I like him as a pick. If you didn't want to go for Mateta, though, the huge omission in this team is João Pedro. So you might not be able to afford it based on your value, but Mateta to João Pedro, you can always make a move like Anderson to Dewsbury Hall on the bench to free up, or even Anderson all the way down to King. And getting João Pedro in for Mateta, I can absolutely understand that. And in all honesty, I don't think there's much to separate them. I'm just a big fan of Jean-Philippe Mateta, and I really like the fixture this week at home. So yeah, that is the team as things stand. Fantasy Football Hub have rated it at 91% for this game week, which isn't that high. 65.4 predicted points. Let me know what you think of the structure. Let me know what you think about going without Salah. Let me know what you think about the picks. Is there any place that this team is massively lacking? What I'd like to do now very briefly before we look at the free hit is just talk about a few of the other things that you might want to think about to do with this team and the structure. And then, yeah, like I said, we'll take a look at that free hit and the players that I would pick for Game Week 4. So, guys, I spoke about a lot of this when I went through the team and spoke about the players and the teams to target. But here are the things that I would be thinking about in relation to the draft that I just showed you, which is worth trying to sort out in your mind at the start of the week. Because as you get closer to the deadline, you can think about things like, do I want Xavi Simons over Kudus? Should I go for Lacroix instead of Munoz to put a little bit more money on the bench for a potential bench boost? Like, these are the things you can worry about. But right now, it should be, which premiums do I want? What is the general structure? Also, a little bit of thought about chip strategy and the general teams that you're looking to target. So, as I said on Salah, there are 2 ways you can go about getting Salah in, and you need to think about if either of them are worth it. The one which most people would like is getting Salah in alongside Haaland. It's just up to you. Do you think Salah is that good? Do you think Salah will go that massive in Game Week 4 in particular that you think you need him for captaincy? Because if you think Salah scores very similarly to Erling Haaland in Game Week 4, I'd much rather Haaland moving forward, personally myself at the moment. But you need to think yourself, how much damage will he do this week? But also moving forward, do you think that Salah will start to find his feet a little bit? I just think, like I say, when I tried putting Salah in, I had to completely downgrade the defence. So the defence lost a lot of the value that I had in there in the wildcard draft that I just showed you. Rather than having like a Grealish, I had to go down to a Dewsbury Hall. I had to downgrade one of my other midfielders to Tijani Reinders. And I think I had to lose Gyökeres down to like a João Pedro. And some of those might not seem like massive downgrades to you. And again, might be worth it if you want Salah. I'm just not sure that I liked that draft. So the other way, again, and this one's much simpler, if you want Salah rather than Haaland, you just do Haaland down to like a João Pedro, Gakpo up to Salah, and then I think you end up having to find about $1 million to put that all together. It's nice and easy to do that. I would probably commit to just choosing one and then base your chip strategy in and around that. But I equally think if you want to put both in, there are enough cheap assets with Josh King, Dewsbury Hall, Reinders, Anderson, the really good 4.5-ish defenders, Chris Richards, Anderson in defence from Fulham. You've got Senesi. There are good cheap options that can allow you to build that squad. It just looked a little bit too sacrificed for me. The next thing is around a Game Week 6 free hit. So as I said, Game Week 6 free hit is very, very popular at the moment. Do you want to follow suit? And when I say follow suit, I'm not trying to say that like a dirty one. Oh my God, you're doing the template. That's terrible. It's absolutely fine to free hit in 6. I think it is one of the best weeks to free hit, hence why I'm looking at doing it with my own team. Or do you think actually, as I said with that one, I can build a team that I like, that has good fixtures in 6, and it allowed me to have a very similar team to those that will free hit in 6, just with my normal team. So I thought I would just jump over to FPL to very briefly show you this. So this is my team at the moment, but I've chucked Grealish in there as an example. So Grealish isn't actually in my team, don't worry. At the moment, it is Tijani Reinders, right? So on Grealish, Grealish's fixtures overall don't look that bad coming up because especially you've got that West Ham. If you're free hitting in game week 6, his fixtures are then Villa, Liverpool, Palace, City over the next 5. That looks a lot weaker when you take that one fixture out. And you could still go and pick him. But if you were to commit to a free hit 6 with your wildcard draft this week, then you probably wouldn't want to put Jack Grealish in because you can just have him on the free hit in 6. Another good example actually is probably Semenyo. So if I just type in Semenyo there, again, I actually think that all of these fixtures are fine. So maybe not as perfect of an example, but Brighton, Newcastle, Leeds, Fulham, Palace. If you take out the fixture in game week 6, there are no green fixtures there, and that's definitely the best fixture of the bunch. So maybe, again, you feel less inclined to go and load up on Bournemouth, considering you can have 3 of them on your free hit against Leeds in game week 6. The example, obviously, is with Crystal Palace as well. Crystal Palace have Liverpool at home in game week 6. When you look at the fixtures overall, it makes them look a lot weaker. If you remove that, though, because you're going to free hit that week, it's then Sunderland, West Ham, Everton, Bournemouth. So I guess what I'm getting at here is I think at the very least, you don't have to plan out exactly when you want to free hit, but at the very least, I think you should decide, do you want to go in 6 or not? Because I think it will drastically change your wildcard draft this week. If you told me that you definitely want to free hit in 6, I would go with Salah rather than Haaland. I probably wouldn't have Jack Grealish in there. These are some of the things that I would be thinking about in my team. I think Spurs have good fixtures regardless. So as much as like Kudus has a great fixture against Wolves at home, I think even outside of that, I really like the Spurs fixtures, so that doesn't change it too much. So yeah, that is one thing that I would... What screen was I on? This screen here? That was one thing that I would absolutely be thinking about, is free hit 6. The next is, do you want to plan for a bench boost? We know that Burnley have Nottingham Forest at home in game week 5, which is probably their best fixture for the foreseeable future alongside game week 8. So if you want a Dubravka and a Stev on your bench, do you maybe want to try and build your team so that it doesn't look bad for a bench boost in 5 or 8? That's something else I'll be thinking about. The next thing is Aston Villa. I know it's strange to put a team on here, but this is really something to think about. How much do you think the first 3 game weeks are representative? Because now, if I go over to Fantasy Football Hub to show you the fixture difficulty, or the fixture ticker, I should say, over the next 4 game weeks, Aston Villa are comfortably top right now. They've got Everton, Sunderland, Fulham, Burnley. Sunderland and Burnley in the next 4. If you're going off fixtures and trying to predict future points, surely the likes of Rodgers and Watkins do very well over those next 4. But based on the opening 3, they have been absolutely rubbish. How much weight do you give that? Do you try and actually go against the form and against the curve a little bit and say, actually, everyone else is going to be offloading my Villa? This is when I pick a wildcard team with Watkins and Rodgers. As crazy as that sounds, I would not be surprised if those two do extremely well over the coming game weeks. You could even still go out there and pick a defender and just think, do you know what? They're not playing too many fantastic attacks over the next 4. I could see clean sheets. Maybe don't go overboard. Maybe don't go for both of them. But if you wanted to slip a Morgan Rodgers or an Ollie Watkins into your wildcard draft, I wouldn't mind that. And by the way, if you do want to check out fixture difficulty over the coming game weeks, like you can adjust it based on sample size, you can adjust it based on attack, defense, you can include and exclude certain game weeks as well to see how that affects it. There'll be a link down below. There's so much more over at Fantasy Football Hub, but they're still doing 50% off at the moment. So that is something else I'll be thinking about, is Aston Villa. And then finally is Alexander Isak. Do you want to leave yourself money in the bank to go and get Isak, or at least an obvious route in your team? I would just think about if Isak comes off the bench in game week 4, scores a goal, looks fantastic, and you think he starts in game week 5, do you have an easy-ish or at least a slightly more obvious route to go and get him? And if not, do you want to build your team in a way where it's possible? For me, in the team that I just showed you, actually, I can just go back and scroll here and show you what it would probably be. It would either be Haaland down to Isak, which frees up some money to upgrade the midfield, which I don't mind at all, or it would be Gakpo down to a 5.5 to 6 million midfielder, and then Gyökeres up to Isak. As much as I wouldn't want to sell Gyökeres ahead of his good fixtures, if I thought, you know what, he looks that fantastic that I've got to go out there and put him in my team, that's one way. Another way is Jean-Philippe Mateta up to Isak. That's about 3 million I'd need to free up. Gakpo down to King would also do that. So there are various routes in this team, and I guess that's what I'm showing here, is that there are a few ways at least that I can go out there and get Isak if he looks fantastic. So yeah, that's the wildcard team. Enough said there. Let's briefly look at a free hit team as well for those interested. So guys, in all fairness, the Game Week 4 free hit team doesn't look too dissimilar in a lot of places to the Game Week 4 wildcard team, because obviously if you're picking players that look good this week, you might potentially want them in your wildcard team. So the defense is identical. So in goal, I've got David Raya, and then the back three is Porro, Munoz, Cucurella. So those four are exactly the same as the four that I would pick on a Game Week 4 wildcard. The only difference here is I've gone and chucked Anderson in as the fourth defender with his great fixture against Leeds. And again, you might want to go out there and pick Anderson ahead of Senesi anyway, but I think especially I would just prefer the chances of a clean sheet for Anderson than I would for a Senesi against Brighton. And then even down to the fifth defender at 4 million is the same as well. So defence is virtually identical. Other players that I would consider, a Liverpool defender, obviously. Like Liverpool have probably the best clean sheet chance this week against Burnley. I've just opted to pick 3 attackers instead and go all out on Liverpool scoring goals. But if you wanted an Alisson Becker or a Virgil van Dijk in there, or even someone like a Kirkes, you absolutely could pick them instead. I've not been overly impressed by Liverpool's defence thus far, but Van Dijk's been great for DEFCON. We know that he's obviously got historically good goal threat in the air, and also I just don't expect Burnley to get too many chances in this game. So yeah, that's probably where I'll be looking. You could even double up on the Arsenal defence, maybe go for Gabriel and Raya, or you could double up on the Crystal Palace defence against Sunderland for Munoz and maybe a Lacroix or a Richards. But I like the way that defence looks right now. The midfield, 3 of the players are the same. So it's still got Kudus, Gakpo and Semenyo, 3 players that I picked on the Game Week 4 wildcard team. Obviously, the addition is, if you're free hitting this week, you've got to go with Mohamed Salah. As much as I said I think Haaland could do very well in comparison to him this week, if you had the choice just for 1 week between Salah against Burnley or Haaland against United, as much as Haaland can score a hat-trick against Manchester United, we've seen that before, I think you choose Mohamed Salah in that instance. Yeah, he is in this team, and as that means then you probably can't get Erling Haaland unless, as per the discussion around the wildcard, you sacrifice a lot elsewhere. So this is a Salah-only free hit. I've got Josh King as the midfielder on the bench simply because he's cheap and he's got Leeds, and he's actually been very impressive. The front three then is a little bit different to the wildcard one. So I've still got Jean-Philippe Mateta, but then I've gone for Ekitike and João Pedro. Ekitike is an interesting one because Isak does have a chance, I suppose, of starting this, so that might put you off, but I just would be so surprised, and I think it would be so harsh on whoever dropped out of Gakpo and Ekitike. I just don't see the need to rush Isak in. So I think Ekitike gets at least sort of 60, 65 minutes, and against Burnley, that might be enough. And when I'm looking at what you want to achieve on a free hit, you want to pick players that people on a wildcard or people with their transfers wouldn't get. And players like Gakpo and Ekitike, probably this week by most engaged managers, won't be heavily transferred in due to the doubts around their long-term minutes. So getting them on a free hit feels pretty nice. And I've gone for, João Pedro as well. João Pedro is an interesting one. Obviously, post-international break, playing with Brazil. We've seen in the past for Brighton, his minutes haven't always been perfect. I just think he's so important to Chelsea right now. I don't see anyone else that can play the role that he is in the team. So as much as he won't be on penalties, because I think Palmer will be back, and Enzo even took a penalty ahead of him. Whether you think that would be the case in the future, I think Palmer will be back regardless. But he just looks so good right now. He looks like the main man. He was definitely a mistake on my Game Week 1 team to go without him. And if I was free hitting this week, and again, I need to play it in and around that price because I can't get up to a Gyökeres or a Haaland, I think I would have João Pedro in there. I did also think about maybe going for Eva Nilsson and then instead of Semenyo picking someone else, because Semenyo and João Pedro are very highly owned as a pair, right? Semenyo's already had 4 price rises. João Pedro is extremely popular, about 60% owned. If you went for Eva Nilsson and a slightly more differential midfielder, whoever that may be, that might be a nice way to sort of set yourself apart. So maybe rather than Semenyo and João Pedro, you went for Neto and Eva Nilsson. Or even Elanga and Eva Nilsson. That could be a nice way to differentiate. If you're just looking at this and thinking, this looks incredibly template, I want to try and be a little bit different if I can. But yeah, being different isn't always the best. At the end of the day, try and pick the players that you think will get the most points. So yeah, to read out the team in its entirety, Raya in goal, Porro, Munoz, Cucurella as the back 3, Kudus, Gakpo, Salah and Semenyo as the midfield 4, and then Mateta, Ekitike and João Pedro as the front 3. If you're really happy with your team, but this week it doesn't look great, I think a Game Week 4 free hit does make a lot of sense. However, if you are slightly unhappy with your team, as you can see here, it's not that much stronger, this team, for me, than a Game Week 4 wildcard. So I think for a lot of people, maybe just play the wildcard, because you can keep the free hit in your back pocket, you still have a strong team for Game Week 4, and also you could probably have a much stronger Game Week 5, Game Week 6, Game Week 7, and maybe start to claw back some of the points that we probably inevitably lost in the opening few weeks. Let me know what you think of this free hit team. Let me know where it differs from yours if you're playing the chip. And let me know if across this entire video you think there are any players that I've failed to consider that might deserve to be in either of the 2 drafts. So guys, there you have it. That is a Game Week 4 wildcard and free hit video, all combined with a couple of drafts in there. Hopefully you have enjoyed if you're playing a chip. And let me know if you've watched this entire video down below in the comments, but you've not actually activated a chip and you don't plan on it. You are the real legends out there. If you've got to this point and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. Make sure to drop a like on the video as well. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.